I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission for February 22nd, 2023. And I'd like to ask Danielle for a roll call, please.
Chairperson Preston,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Lloyd, Commissioner Borders,
Here.
Commissioner DeChristopher,
Here.
Commissioner Kilgore,
Here.
Commissioner Cron,
Here.
Commissioner Perry.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask Commissioner Borders, please lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, prior to starting the meeting, I would like to put a request because when I'm short, so I want to point out is that if any of the commissioners, please work with me and use the little hands up and let me acknowledge you and do a visual so that way I can call on you so everybody has a chance, okay? Thank you. And the next is public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment and discuss any topic that is relative or within the authority of this public body. So if you would like to just do public comment, please come forward. You need to sign in on the sign-in sheet and then also state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. No public comment? Okay, great. Then what I'd like to do is for possible action, approval for the minutes for January 25th, 2023. Would you like to approve? You want to do a second, or do you want to approve? I'll let you approve.
I was present, so.
I'll move to accept the minutes of February 25th, or January 25th, 2023.
And then you second him? Commissioner Kilgore seconds. Okay, I'll approve. Aye. Any nays? Minutes are approved. Okay, on to meeting items. First on the agenda is item number 6A, LU-2023-0018 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a request from Harris Lake Tahoe applicant for a special use permit, SUP, to retain an existing billboard on the property zone general commercial GC located at 4900 South Carson Street, assessor's parcel number APN 009-284-01. And Heather.
Thank you. Heather Ferris for the record. The parcel is zoned general commercial and is located on the west side of South Carson Street, just north of its intersection with Highway 50 West and 580. With the exception of the billboard, the parcel is vacant. The billboard has been at this location since at least the mid-1970s. The applicant is requesting to retain the existing billboard at this location. Per the city's development standards, a special use permit for a billboard automatically expires 5 years from the date of issuance, unless approved for a new special use permit by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission last reviewed this billboard in 2018, and it was approved for another 5 years at that time. Division 4 of the development standards outlines the requirements for new billboards and renewals of existing billboards. The subject billboard meets the requirements for renewal of existing billboards. The Planning Commission has the authority to approve a special use permit upon making each of the required findings in the affirmative. Staff was able to make all findings and is recommending approval subject to the conditions of approval included in the staff report. We have not received any public comments related to this item. With that, I'm available for questions, and the applicant is also here available for questions.
Okay, can the applicant come to the table, please? Yes, and can you sign in, please, and state your name? Okay, can you spell that for the clerk?
Cool. So it's Brandon Pulliam, Pulliam, Brandon, Brandon.
Okay, do we have questions for staff, or are we going to ask Pete? Okay, all right. I'd like to ask her questions for staff, please. And, all right, and Fern, Commissioner Cron?
Oh, there we go. Just a quick question maybe for the applicant or for Heather. Um, The conditions of approval talk about it being painted an earth tone color as well as maintaining it free from graffiti. But what happens if the sign is damaged? You have a lot of wind that comes down through there or vandalism. How is that addressed by the applicant?
So the code does outline what is allowed to be repaired when there is damage. I would have to reference the code and review that to speak specifically to it, but the code does address that.
Okay, so if for some reason part of it was blown over, they being the applicant would then have to repair it in some manner, shape, or form,
Or remove it.
or remove it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And Commissioner Borders?
Heather, in this next item that we're going to talk about, there's a condition of approval that allows for administrative approval in the future. Can we not do that with billboards?
We cannot do that with billboards because the code specifically states that billboards do need to come back to the Planning Commission. So that would require an amendment to the code. For the next item, which we'll talk about, that's not the case.
Okay. And the condition number 2 says that all development shall be substantially in accordance with the approved plans. What's substantially? Shouldn't it be in accordance with the approved plans?
There are times when the structure might move maybe a foot or two one way or the other, as long as they're still meeting the intent essentially, or they're substantially in compliance at that point. It's a subjective term.
Okay, and my standard question with billboards is if this was a new billboard, would it meet the code?
Generally speaking, it would. There are,
It looked to me like the
A
lighting
couple-
was lighted up instead of down.
right, and then the setbacks from the redevelopment area, this is
Yeah.
actually within the redevelopment area, and the setbacks from other billboards. There is another billboard within 1,000 feet. But because it is a renewal, they do not have to meet that because it's been in place since prior to our current standards.
And we cannot or could not require them to move the lights to a downward.
If the lights are an issue, I
Well,
don't believe
tell
they are.
We tell everybody we're a dark sky community and we advocate all of this, and then we're going to approve another billboard that shines lights up into the sky. I just think that's a double standard, that's all.
So, I mean, we can have that discussion with the applicant, but
Okay.
the lights have not been an issue and they've been in place for some time.
Yes, I understand. Thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Perry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Heather, question for you. Could you just refresh our memory on where billboards are allowed in the city? Because as I recall, that's in code, and it's Carson Street and Highway 50, I think, right, to some, in general.
Yeah, bear with me, I don't know it off the top of my head, I have to reference the code. So they're permitted along North and South Carson Streets between Douglas and Washoe counties, US Highway 50 between Lyon County and North Carson Street, and the south side of US Highway 50 west from the Douglas County line to 660 feet east of the point within Section 31, Township 15 North, Range 20 East.
Thank you.
Sure.
And this fits within that.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay, now, Mr. Coates, okay. Have you read the conditions of approval? Okay, would you have a problem with putting the lights down and downward?
I can definitely propose it to the team. I don't think it'd be an issue, though.
Would it be the position of the board to want the lights downward because we do have the night sky?
it would be my position that I think we ought to do that if we're gonna be consistent. Because this is an older billboard. At the time, it wasn't required, but I certainly would go with whatever anybody wants to do.
Seems to be that the board would like to, as I look through with all the different commissioners, they all seem to indicate that they would like to have the lights down
Okay.
rather than shining up. So if we could add that, Heather, as a condition of approval?
We could add that as a condition of approval if the planning commission feels that it's necessary to make the findings. And I would just ask that we provide them with a time frame within which they need to achieve that.
What kind of time frame do you think you would need to achieve that? Because all the electrical's there, it's just changing the lamps, right?
Correct. Do 90 days? Okay.
I'm asking,
Okay,
I can propose 90 days and shoot for 90 days for it.
okay. So, all right, so would you accept those?
Yeah, yes, I would
those
accept.
conditions
Yes.
with the amended
Yes.
condition? Okay,
Sorry.
all right. And do we have any public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. And do we find all the findings of fact? Somebody would like to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve LU 2023-18 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report with an additional condition 8 that the lights be reoriented to point down instead of up within a 90-day period.
All in favor?
I'll second.
Oh, sorry, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any nays?
Nay, and that's on my broken record response of one day I hope to see the day where we don't have billboards in our skylines anymore. And so in that case, I will never, ever vote yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, and I think you're approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we go into 6B LU 2023-0019 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a request from Richard Atkins, application for a review of special use permit, SUP, for 4 metal storage containers on the property zoned general commercial, GC, located at 4261 Highway 50 East, assessor parcel number APN 008-292-27.
Thank you, Heather Ferris, again for the record. So this parcel is also zoned general commercial, and it's located on the south side of Highway 50 East between Fairview Drive and Empire Ranch Road. The primary use for the parcel is a flooring store. In 2005, the Planning Commission approved a special use permit for the placement of 4 metal storage containers on the subject parcel. The containers are located to the rear of the building, and they've been well-maintained since 2005. The special use permit has been reviewed every 5 years, with the exception of 2020. So unfortunately, it was overlooked by staff at that time, but we are bringing it before you this evening. Staff has not received any complaints regarding the storage containers since they were placed in 2005, and the applicant is requesting the continued use of those containers. The code requires a special use permit for containers to be reviewed every 5 years. However, it can be done administratively and does not require the Planning Commission review. Therefore, staff is recommending condition number 8, which requires the administrative review of the special use permit to ensure compliance. However, it would not come before the Planning Commission unless referred to the Planning Commission by the Community Development Director. This is what we've done with the last several SUPs for containers, and it seems to be working well. And I think this is the last SUP that would be reviewed by the Planning Commission. All of them have been updated to essentially remove the requirement for Planning Commission review. We have not received any public comment related to this request. I'm available for questions, and the applicant is also here.
And would the applicant like to come forward? Okay, please sign in and state your name.
Okay. Cynthia Pettipaw. I'm so nervous. I'm shaking.
Oh, don't be nervous.
I know. I can't help
We
it.
haven't bitten anybody lately.
I know.
So-
It's Pettipas.
Thank you.
Cynthia.
Okay. And have you read the conditions of approval, and do you accept them?
Yes.
Okay. And commissioners, is there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Perry?
It's a question for staff. So this one actually expired in 2020. So if this is approved, are we approving it 5 years from today? Or are we going from 20 to 25 and catching the 2 years where it wasn't approved?
So it would be 5 years from today.
From today?
Yeah.
Okay, I just thought that would be, because I didn't read it on here anywhere.
Did I not
so-
have it in the conditions? We can add a condition of approval requiring that. The code already requires the review, so
Well, that way it would be a little easier to trigger up next time there's an administrative review.
we can certainly add that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lloyd?
This is a question for staff as well. Heather, just for clarification, is this coming back to us first then, instead of just going straight to administrative review because it expired? Or,
So this one is coming back to the Planning Commission because the conditions of approval from 2005 until 2018 included an unnecessary review by the Planning Commission.
okay,
After reviewing the code, we don't feel that it's necessary.
Any further questions, commissioners? Seeing none. Did you accept the conditions of approval? You
Yes.
accepted those?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. And then would someone like to go ahead and make a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Borders.
I'd like to make a motion that we move to approve LU 2023-0019 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report, including an amendment to recommendation number 8 that says that this will be subject to community director review on February 22nd, 2028.
Madam Chair, I don't believe we called for
We
public
did not
comment.
call for public comment. Is there any public comment?
Oops.
Oops. Yeah, seeing none. Okay, can I have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
Thank-
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is 6C, LU-2023-0017 for possible action and discussion and possible action regarding an application from Lennar Reno LLC applicant for a special use permit, SUP, to allow for temporary tract sales office, model homes, parking area, advertising and signage on properties zoned single-family 6,000, SF6, located at 1484 West Sunset Way and 1409, 1419, 1429, and 1439 Pickaxe Street. Assessor parcel numbers APN 001-263-01 through 04 and 001-264-10.
Good evening, Heather Manzo for the record. So the project is located on the east side of Mountain Street within the Anderson Ranch community that's under construction currently. The applicant has proposed a landscape plan that is consistent with the overall approved landscape plan for the subdivision. The landscaping that is shown on the screen right now is the approved plan from the subdivision. And I just wanted to note that as part of the required landscape buffer areas, there's an 8-foot wide landscape buffer along the north side of lot number 7 that you can see there that is included on the applicant's plan for the model home request that's before you this evening. There's also some landscaping along Mountain Street, which is on the right-hand side of the screen there. And that is a part of the overall site improvement plans and will be constructed, but it's not on site for the model homes, so it may come in at a later time than when the model homes would come online. So I just wanted to note that there are 2 different landscape areas within the general vicinity of the model homes. And in speaking with the applicant, they did think that the landscaping along Mountain Street will be installed sometime this spring. This request is for 2 model homes and a sales office and parking area associated with that sales office. So the 2 model homes are currently under construction. If you visited the site, you'll see their framework is already in. And then on the northernmost parcel, which is the left-hand side, is where it says buffer area there. That's actually a parking lot to accommodate vehicles for potential home buyers to park and then access the model homes through a gate coming from that parking lot area. There will be, in association with this, the landscaping as I described earlier, as well as a 6-foot privacy fence along the north, east, and south sides of lots 7, 8, and 9. So there's 3 lots that are associated with the model home request. And then along with the model home request is a sign package that's customary for model home projects that we've seen come online in the past in our area. This is very consistent to one you saw a couple months ago for another development that this developer is working on within Carson. So the X's are some flags that are set to not to call attention to the model home complex without having flags right in your face as you're driving or walking down the street. And then some entry signs, and then the model home signs themselves. We did receive a couple public comments related to this request. One was received noting concerns regarding parking on Mountain Street. The concern really was that they thought that people that might be visiting this as potential home buyers may be parking on Mountain Street. There is going to be that solid fencing that really kind of encloses the model home complex, and there is the parking that's accommodated on site. So I don't think that there's going to be a parking issue that would flow out onto Mountain Street for this request. And then there was another public comment that you received that noted a conversation between the resident and myself, confirming some of the proposed elements of this request, including fencing, landscaping, site lighting, and things of that nature. One of the comments that were included on that had to do with the desire for an access easement from their property through one of these lots. I just want to note that that's not under consideration for the Planning Commission. It is not something that the Planning Commission would make a decision on. That is a matter between that owner and the developer, if that should come about in the future. So with that, staff was able to make all of the one more thing, elevations. Sometimes the most important thing. So again, 2 model homes. I put the fronts of the model homes on there. The homes will incorporate materials around the other sides of the buildings, and as I mentioned before, those are under construction. So one of them will have an ADA compliant restroom in it, and the other one will have the sales office. So staff was able to make all the findings and is recommending the Planning Commission approve. And the applicant's here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, and can the applicant come up, please?
For the record, Tom Sosa, Lennar Homes.
Okay. And have you read recommended conditions of approval?
I'm sorry?
Have you read the recommended conditions of approval?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. And you accept those?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I have some questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Cron?
Heather, could you back up to the location of the different signs? There you go, thank you. So with all the different location of the signs along Mountain Street, I'm assuming they are going to go into the landscape bed, so we'll go sidewalk, landscape bed, fence, and then those, if you will, the signage will actually go into the landscape bed itself. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There were a couple of signs that they needed to verify meet the vision triangles, and so those will be located appropriately, basically at the intersection there. But yes, it'll be fence, flags, and then sidewalk.
Okay, all right. And then the other question, the timing, I guess, concerns me a little bit. Could maybe the applicant go into the timing of the landscaping and the fences a little bit more, please?
Sure. So the landscaping of the models will be done, weather permitting, in the next couple of months. The fences at the same time. The landscaping that Heather was referring to was between the back of these and Mountain Street is a common area. It's not necessarily a part of the model home complex. It's part of the common area of the subdivision. The only reason we're trying to do the same thing with just weather permitting, that there's a chance that they're installed at the same time by the time that the models open later this year in hopefully May. There's a chance that they're done at the same time, if not right thereafter. We're trying to get all that landscaping done at the same time, just weather, basically.
So basically this spring is what your goal is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not going to drag on until fall or anything
No,
like that?
we want to get both the north and the east side done this spring.
Okay, and that would include the buffer for the
Correct.
neighbors, correct? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Commissioner Borders?
Thank you. Heather, in condition number 9, it says all signage shall be removed upon the sale of the last lot. Presumably, the last lot is next to the last lot is one of those model homes. I would think that the signage ought to come out sooner than that. I can't imagine us leaving signs up in a parking lot if we're gonna make a home out of it, if we've sold that lot, or if we've sold one of the model homes, that we would keep signage up there. So it just doesn't seem smooth, that's all. And I just wondered if there's a better way to just, I know what the intent we're trying to do is, I just wonder if there's a better way to do it.
So this condition is very consistent with the model homes that have been approved within the last couple of years. I mean, if there's other wording that you would like to have, then we can definitely, consider
I don't have any
modification.
better wording, I'm
Okay.
just asking.
Yeah, I think once the last lot goes into contract, then it's considered sold and they can pull their signage.
Okay, and for the applicant, is the parking lot just some kind of DG or some kind of gravel, or is it gonna be asphalt?
It'll be asphalt.
Okay,
It'll be paved.
and it's gonna, which way is it gonna drain? Toward the street?
I believe so. I believe it'll come towards Pixags.
Okay, so then when you finally sell that lot, you're gonna have to remove all that.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Thank you. Commissioner Christopher?
I do have a concern regarding North Mountain Street, having parking by the model homes and here's my thought on it. I'm in that area quite a bit, walking and driving. And for those who are not familiar with the North Mountain Fleischman intersection, it can be confusing to them to begin with. So then when you add the additional distraction of people trying to figure out where they're going, model homes, perhaps didn't know model homes, there's a point of interest over here, I do have a concern with that. And the question I have is for the city, would we be able to have no parking for that side of where the model homes are or where the development is on North Mountain?
So I can turn it over to engineering if you want more of an answer than what I'm going to give you now. But Mountain is designed to accommodate parking on both sides of the street, and it does currently today. So this development doesn't really trigger a need to modify how the street functions today. I did want to note that item number 1 there on the corner of Mountain and Sunset is that directional signage that's going to point potential home buyers into the development to visit the model homes there. So that should help to reduce any potential confusion of folks approaching the model home site. And if you want more explanation, we can turn it over to Chris.
We can wait for public comment. Thank you.
And Commissioner Lloyd?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Lloyd, for the record, I just have a question for the applicant of clarification. When do you expect the model homes to be operating, like the operating hours and days?
I think at this point, we're shooting for May, but the weather's been holding us back.
But Monday through Sunday,
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
7 days a week?
7 days a week.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, Commissioner Cron?
One more quick question regarding the parking lot. I was curious if there had been any discussion with the applicant regarding gating the parking lot. So you would close it after hours, so nobody could get in there and use it during, the evening. Was that even a discussion, or is that a concern?
That's not a concern of ours. We have quite a few of these throughout northern Nevada, and I've never had that be an issue.
Thank you.
I'd like to open it up for public comment. Okay. Regarding public comment, please sign in and state your name, hit the little green button, and you're limited to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Pat Anderson. I live 1502 Mountain Street. I'll be the house adjacent to lot number 7 where the parking lot's going in. Thank you for, Vice Chair, for clarifying on the hours of operation, that it will be 7 days a week, 8 to 6. I did want to get confirmation on lighting. This can be responded to by either Heather Manzo or the applicant. It's definitely my desire not to see that lot lit up at night. And so if I could get a response on that. And then, my easement issues will be discussed. I've been in discussion with Dustin, and maybe I'll be in discussion with you someday. But I've heard some concerns about parking on Mountain Street. I've had several of my neighbors voice that they would like me to see this brought up this evening, and I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it added as a condition of approval for this application, that the sidewalk that is currently unfinished from my house down to the entrance would be West Sunset Way, if that could be completed as part of this as a condition of approval. Currently, the kids, it's a heavily trafficked route for the middle school kids and even some of the elementary school kids. And currently they're walking out in the street on Mountain Street because there's no sidewalk right there. They don't cross the street. A lot of the people on that side of the street don't plow their sidewalks. So even if you did, it wouldn't be, safe to walk. So I'd like for that to be at least discussed and potentially considered as a condition of approval.
Heather, would you like to address some of the concerns?
So I did confirm with the applicant regarding site lighting that they're not planning on doing any unusual overhead lighting or parking lot lighting with this. They will have some accent lighting around the fronts of the houses and maybe some of the landscape areas like you would see in a regular single-family residence. No special lighting is provided. And then in terms of the sidewalks, if the Planning Commission is unable to make a finding without a condition requiring that with this model home project, then that's something that the Planning Commission is able to add.
Okay, and Commissioner Lloyd?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Lloyd for the record. Heather, with this project, would that sidewalk be completed when the project was completed? Is that part of the project?
It's part of the Anderson Ranch overall site improvements. So they have a permit that has been issued for those improvements, including the sidewalk and the landscaping on Mountain. They just haven't gotten to that phase of the overall site improvements at this point. It's dirt, it's being worked on.
Thank you, Heather.
Okay, Commissioner Cron?
Yeah, I'm just thinking from the applicant's standpoint, maybe a sidewalk isn't a bad thing from just a finished look out there on your model homes. That would be just kind of like, what would be your thoughts on that being able, because it gives that front a nice finished look versus, still under construction look.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't know the specifics of that sidewalk. I know within the community, we were scheduled to pour sidewalks about a month and a half ago, and the weather's kept us from doing it. I would assume that one would be done at the same time as the rest of the sidewalks, potentially even the same as the landscaping, outside of if there was something that we had to do, that I'm just not aware of. But otherwise, I would assume that that sidewalk would be done with the rear landscaping as well.
Would you be opposed to a condition that allows that to be completed about the same time your landscaping is?
I'm not necessarily opposed to that, assuming that there's nothing that logistically is holding us back from being able to do that. I guess that's the only thing. I agree with what your statement was. For our sake of trying to sell homes, I think that's the best way anyways. It would look nice. I just don't know if there's something more from a practicality standpoint that would hold us back from doing that. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Christopher?
I just wanted to add that I would be, if a sidewalk isn't in there at the time that the model homes are open, then I do go back to the parking issue because it leaves more people exiting a vehicle into the roadway opposed to out. That's going to be during the springtime. It's going to be muddy. So I feel strongly about that if we can't do that, then yes, I'm back to engineering and asking about whether or not we'd be able to do no parking for that particular piece immediately behind those 4 lots.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Commissioner Lloyd for the record. This is kind of a dual question, a question for staff, then a question for the applicant. Would we be able to put a condition of approval in here for a sidewalk pending weather? I mean, like, can you instead of couch it with a time frame, can we put like a natural event?
I think it would be challenging to, it sounds like from the applicant's perspective, really the weather is kind of their holdup. They are very interested in completing the improvements because it does improve the aesthetics of the development. So I would recommend maybe a generous timeline to ensure that weather's not going to be a factor.
Okay. Commissioner Porter?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
That's okay. For the applicant, so if we put a condition in, condition of approval, let's say for a sidewalk, to be completed by the time that you open the doors of the model homes, would that be sufficient or?
I would say yes, assuming that there's nothing. What my concern is I don't know if there's an easement issue or if there's something that we're trying to figure out.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's the case. I have a feeling that it's going to be done as soon as the weather clears up, and this isn't really that big of a deal. But I don't want to say that, and then there's a bigger issue that we're trying to deal with, and that's why it's not done.
Okay.
That's at least my stand.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Borders?
Heather, in the conditions of approval, I know we've talked about the landscape plan and doing the landscape, but there's nothing in the conditions of approval that say we're going to do it for these 3 lots that I could readily see.
It's the condition related to what's being presented. So the applicant has to build and complete the project as presented. So they presented their landscape plan and would have to complete it based on the proposed plan that's before you on the
Well,
slide there.
and in that case, if the sidewalk was included in the landscape plan, then it would all be covered under the same umbrella.
So the on-site landscaping and sidewalks. So what they've proposed are to the development of those 3 lots, as shown on the slide. So the landscaping and the sidewalks and the parking area and all of that associated with model homes has to be completed before they can open the model homes. If there's a separate condition for the sidewalk, that would be treated differently. Sidewalk on Mountain Street, sorry. So that's separate. That's the overall site improvements for Anderson
got you.
Ranch
Okay.
itself.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Perry?
Thank you. Tom, unrelated to all these conditions, I want to ask you if you can tell us about what these places are going to sell for.
As far as price,
Yes,
that's the million-dollar question. I don't know.
not determined yet, huh?
Not determined yet.
Okay. We're always interested in hearing about affordable housing.
I can tell you the square footage, but I can tell you what we're building there, but I don't know what pricing. It's, the market's pretty dynamic right now. Interest rates are still climbing, and so all of that plays a factor into this. And we, if I'm being completely honest, we probably won't know until about a week or 2 before we open.
And that's going to be around May.
That's what we're shooting for, yes.
Thanks.
I'm going to bring it back on the sidewalks, because I think that is important to put the sidewalks in. Not only do we have the situation going on Fleshman, we also will have kids in the spring walking in front of there. We are going to have increased traffic. But, I mean, I used to walk that route when I was going to Fridge. So I look at this going, oh my gosh, I remember being in the road. So I don't know. I think I would really like to see if we could put that sidewalk in as a condition. Is there any problem with the engineering on that, to have that in?
Chris Gonzalez for the record. I don't see any problem with that. Again, I think just putting a condition dependent on weather is a concern.
I'm
but-
not saying a condition depending on weather. I'm saying a condition upon opening those model homes. Because in May, we should be in a situation we are not going to be having the freezing and so forth. And I know that I've poured a lot of sidewalks in freezing weather and put the hay out there and everything else in order to just get it done and make sure you just don't have a hot mix. So, I mean, I think this would be something that would be important. And knowing that particular area and knowing you're putting in these model homes and the parking lot, I can't imagine that there is any kind of underground or anything like that that would preclude that. So, when a motion is made for this, I would definitely want to put in that prior to opening the model homes, that sidewalk be in effect.
May I make a comment?
Yeah.
I'm more comfortable with this. I feel relatively confident that this is all going to happen anyways. If you guys do go ahead and add that in a condition of approval, can we make sure that there is, assuming that there's no issues within the city of, or Carson City, as far as why we can't get the work done? That's, my fear is that we get held up from a permitting standpoint or from a right-of-way standpoint or something along those lines. And now I can't open models because we're weaving through the channels of the city.
My question back to Heather and back to engineering is there any indication that there will be any kind of right-of-way issue or any kind of underground that is there that would preclude the sidewalks?
The answer is no. The permit has been issued, so they're good to go.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, who would like to make a motion with the public comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Gosh. Okay, sorry. Is there any new public comment? Mr. Anderson, if you'd like to do some public comment, that's fine.
Oh, I don't know.
So,
I'll just state that I am very concerned that I will not have access to the back of my property for probably the next 5 to 10 years if there is not some accommodation made that allows me to do so. And I don't know if this is the proper venue, but it really is problematic for me to not be able to access. I mean, I'm sitting on a half acre. It's a really odd piece of property for that neighborhood. And so to move materials up from the driveway, one wheelbarrow at a time, as I stated in my comments, I'm just getting too old for that stuff now, so.
That lot's for sale.
Huh?
That lot's for sale.
What, 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, trust me, I am aware of that. I am keenly aware of that, yes.
See, and that's as far as we can go on advice.
Yeah,
So-
no, I trust me, I am aware, but thank you for the opportunity to make that comment.
Thank you. Commissioners? Want to give it a go, Vern? You want to try?
Sure.
Want to do it?
You want me to do it?
Yeah, you can do it.
Even without my glasses?
Here, you want mine? I can
No.
maybe see.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the special use permit LU 2023-0017 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report, including item number 10, which states that the sidewalk on Mountain Street shall be completed prior to the opening of the model homes.
Second? Second by Vern. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Right.
Heather, I would guess also that if that turns out to be a problem, we would know about it sooner rather than later.
Okay. Okay, going on. Item number 6D, LU-2023-0016 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding an application from Carson Luxury Housing LLC, applicant for special use permit, SUP, for multifamily residential development within the Stafford Greens planned unit development on property zoned neighborhood business NBP, located on the southeast corner of Stafford Way and Silver Sage Drive, assessor's parcel number APN 009-563-07.
Good evening, again, Heather Manzo for the record. So this project is on the southeast corner of Stafford and Silver Sage. And I did provide a kind of a surrounding zoning slide just to kind of note the surrounding area. So the area to the northeast and south of the project, and then southwest, of course, are residential developments. However, most of the area is neighborhood business zoned like the site itself. So what's being proposed are 12 apartment units with a one-car garage assigned to each unit. There are 2 access points to the property. One of them includes ingress and egress onto Stafford. And then from Stafford, you can make a left or a right and go over to Silver Sage and then have left or right access there. And then there's also another egress only that would be a right-hand turn going onto Silver Sage Drive itself. So in terms of access, the right turn onto Silver Sage was a recommended condition of approval with the previously approved special use permit back in 2019, and that had to do with the right-of-way configuration at that time. So what the applicant did is they got a special use permit approved in 2019 and came in for a building permit recently and became aware that their special use permit had expired. So many of the conditions of approval that had been placed on the project before have been incorporated into the presented design. With this, code requires landscaping that would consist of 6-foot minimum wide landscaping along the rights-of-way, as well as landscaping that includes 1 tree for every 400 square feet on site. So the right-of-way landscaping requires a tree for every 30 lineal feet of right-of-way frontage. So the applicant has provided a landscape plan that doesn't necessarily meet code. However, when they come in for a building permit, they are required to meet code at that time. So there is a condition of approval on this project to require the applicant to provide a landscape plan and a common open space plan that demonstrates that their project conforms to the standards for those two elements when they come in for building permit to ensure that they are meeting code with their design. There are 28 parking spaces that are being proposed, and this development would require 24 parking spaces. So they've met the code requirements there. And then in terms of the building elevations, there are 2 different buildings, slightly varied in terms of their side and rear elevations. The fronts look somewhat similar. So there's 2 upstairs units, 2 downstairs units, and then garages that can accommodate 1 car for each unit. And then we did receive public comment that was sent out with your late materials, noting several concerns. And I did also receive either calls or had customers come by to just get information on the project. So in the late materials that were distributed, there were a couple of concerns that were noted that I wanted to make sure I got on record to address. One of them had to do with improper public notice. The resident felt that proper notice had not been provided for this project. So I did go back and look at the record. We did notify 90 residents within a 300-foot radius of this project. Because there are single-family attached developments all surrounding this, it's pretty easy to catch those 90 residents. And we did send out notices properly. There were noted access issues. I think it was mainly a misunderstanding with the type of access that's available from Stafford Way. So what the concern had said is that folks are going to take a right on Stafford and then take a right on the private road named Heaton Way to get access to Silver Sage. That's actually not necessary because folks can leave the apartment complex and take a left on Stafford to go to Silver Sage. So I don't really anticipate there would be any traffic going from this project to Heaton Way, especially since there's no driveway accessing that. There was kind of a comment of how apartments, especially 2-story apartments in this area, are inappropriate and not consistent with the neighborhood character. Just to the east of Chabasco, which is where the zoning changes from neighborhood business to multifamily, those are 2-story units that were established in the 1980s. And then other surrounding development, including the development on Heaton Way, has actually developed after that time. So there is a neighborhood character of both single and 2-story units within this area. Also, if you look on Travis Drive and then on Doubletree Lane to the north, there are also, it's not a single-story only neighborhood. There's no restrictions to that. There's a height limitation of 26 feet, and the applicant is presenting a design that's about 23 and a half feet tall based on our definition of height. So they're falling under the height limitations for the zone. I think that really kind of identifies the areas that I wanted to make sure that we address. And if there's other public comments, I can address them at that time. So at this point, staff was able to make all of the necessary special use permit findings and is recommending that this project be approved, and the applicant is available if you have any questions for them. Thank you.
Okay, could the applicant come forward, please?
My name is Christopher Molt. I'm with West Texas Consulting Engineers.
And push the little green button.
My name is Christopher Moltz. I'm with West Texas Consulting Engineers, the applicant and property owner here as well, if you need to ask any questions to them.
And have you read the 9 findings of fact?
Yes.
And the 9 conditions, I'm sorry, the 9
Yes,
conditions.
the owner and applicant have.
Hmm?
Yes, they have.
Okay, and they are approving those?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and I have some questions from the commissioners. So Commissioner Cron?
Yeah, I had a question for staff. In the applicant's large application packet, he did put in, or they put in, the conditions of approval from last time. And there were 21 conditions of approval last time, and we're down to 9 now. So I was curious, since it's the same project, what happened?
So as a matter of practice, I think we used to condition code quite a bit, and we have really moved away from that because it gives the idea that maybe that can be appealed and modified. So we don't condition code unless it's some sort of unique change, deviation from code that needs to be illustrated in the conditions for a project-specific case. So that's really a lot of them. And then there are design elements that were added as part of the conditions of approval before that the applicant has incorporated into their design, one of them being the right turn design onto Silver Sage. That was a condition previously, and now it's been incorporated into the design.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Borders?
We did the last time you were here. For 30 years, I was the chief financial officer and principal owner of a company called West Tex Management in Texas, which has nothing to do at all with your firm of West Tex Consulting. And as such, I would like to make that disclosure, but I'm also indicating that I'm going to vote on this item. I have no conflict of interest at all. Secondly, Heather, in condition number 5 or 6, it says a photometric plan that demonstrates compliance with the non-residential lighting standards contained in the city code. Why is it a non-residential lighting standard?
Oh, that's a great question. It's actually non-residential zone, so the neighborhood business zoning district triggers the requirement for a photometric plan to ensure that the development complies with the lighting standards for non-residential zones.
Is that more or less restrictive than a residential zone?
It would be more because there's a standard that requires the photometrics plan. So essentially what it requires is that lighting be downlit, shielded, and not extend beyond the property lines. And so that photometrics plan will have to true that up when they come in for building permit.
Okay, and there was, and I've forgotten where I read it, but there's also some discussion about the use of that garage as being, not being able to be used for storage. I didn't see it as a condition, but how does that get enforced?
So condition number 7 is a condition that I've presented to the Planning Commission for apartments
Oh,
that
there
are
it is, okay.
providing for garages. And so the applicant will need to demonstrate how they're going to provide that disclosure and note that. So when they come in for the building permit, they'll have to present to us a plan for approval to notify tenants that they have to use it for parking and it shouldn't be for storage, or shall not be for storage.
Okay, and finally, I probably slept since we last looked at this item, but I do remember that there was a significant amount of public comment about the use of Heaton Road and the fact that that is a private road. And we have 2 of these buildings that have, in essence, small backyards that are going to face Heaton Road. And I believed at the time this was originally done before that there was a requirement for a fence along Heaton Road. And I didn't see it again in those conditions of approval, but I would still like to have that discussion sometime today as we progress on. I understand that that's a private road that belongs to those people that have those townhouses back there, and to have 1, 2, 3, 4 downstairs units with sliding glass doors and small lawns opening up onto a road just seems to invite people to park there. And I just really don't want us to try and do that if we can help it.
Sure. Heaton Way is marked as a private road, and there's a sign as you go onto Heaton that says that parking is prohibited. It's just not wide enough to accommodate parking and two-way traffic. But if the commission would feel more comfortable adding a condition to require the yards to be fenced, then the applicant's raising his hand, but that's something that the planning commission can do in order to make findings.
Yes, sir.
You can't see it on that sheet, but each yard is individually fenced, proposed with a 6-foot wooden fence.
Okay.
So the little boxes around the building on each one. One would be for one side and one would be the.
Wouldn't it not be easier to put a 6-foot fence along the whole property line on Heaton?
I think we'd like them to stay private because the idea is if people have, a small dog or something or a kid that they want them to allow them to play. We can, I'm sure
Oh,
we
I don't
can.
have a problem with
Yeah.
fencing them off that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
I'm just talking
Okay.
about on the
Yeah,
Heaton.
yeah. I mean,
Heaton
like I
side.
said, it's gonna be 70% fenced already. I don't think it'll make much of a difference if we extend that. The only thing is there is drainage inside the landscaping that needs to facilitate, so it just needs to be raised up enough that that would continue to follow the proposed drainage paths in the landscaping.
See, and I think I'm with Commissioner Borders on this because I believe that we had approved a fence right along Heaton Way, just for that primary reason, was so that we realized that there were the smaller fences, but to put that in there so people would not park or even be encouraged to, we only have to run in for 10 minutes.
I think that's a reasonable condition of approval.
Now, I'm not seeing on building 1 where there's fenced backyards.
There is not.
Okay, so there is no fenced backyards on building 1, but building 2, building 2.
Building style too, yes, correct.
Okay, both of them have, okay, great. And Commissioner Cron.
Yeah, one of the other things I'd like to talk about as we move on into the evening is landscaping. And I know that in most situations, the landscape code that Carson City has does a real good job with their projects. But I think this may be a little bit of a unique situation. And so maybe as we listen to the public input, we might want to think specifically about some additional screening down along the south property line. So I just wanted to put that out there for thoughts as we move forward.
Right, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the public that would like to come up and make a comment? Please come forward and sign your name and speak into the microphone, hit the little green button, and please spell your name for the clerk.
There, it's on. My name is Catherine, spelled with a C. Last name is Bourdet, spelled B-O-R-D-E.
Catherine, before you speak, I do want to remind you on public comment, we cannot answer any questions, nor can staff.
I understand that.
So, okay, I have to kind of reiterate that, at every meeting, is that we can't answer public comment, and that staff will go ahead and address any concerns you have after the comment. So thank you, Catherine, for your understanding.
First of all, I'd like to say that I own 2 properties on Heaton Way, and both of these are directly affected by this proposed building. The zoning for this area is currently on the east, north, and south side single family. On the west is single-story offices. The lot that's being considered is zoned commercial. It is not residential. There are no multifamily units within the proposed area of this building that would be affected by this. Some apartments would be 2-story. There are no 2-story buildings directly affected by this. There could be at least 52 renters and 28 parking spaces on less than 3/4 of an acre. There is no stated maximum density. The population could be higher, By contrast, the residential population on Heaton Way, east and west, north and south, is approximately 34. This proposal violates Municipal Code 1802080, Section 5B, Peaceful Use, Enjoyment, Economic Value, and Compatibility, Section 5C, Traffic and Pedestrian, Section 5F, Public Health, Safety, Convenience, and Welfare. It does not have a zoning classification consistent with the master plan for the area. These apartments would be detrimental to the use, peaceful enjoyment, and economic value of the established residences. This proposal would allow objectionable noises and increase physical activity in the immediate area. There would be kids playing loudly, dogs barking, music piped outside, and outdoor parties with accompanying loud noises. Increased car traffic and pedestrian traffic would considerably affect the immediate area. Vehicles exiting onto Stanford, according to my report, could only turn right. Heaton Way is a private street. It would be used by renters as a shortcut to make a turn onto Silver Sage. There would be many more pedestrians as people will walk through our private streets with their dogs and failing to pick up after them, and kids playing on the street. There would be massive traffic jams at the one stop sign on Stafford and Silver Stage. It would be detrimental to public health, safety, convenience, and welfare of the immediate area. Downstairs unit would have private yards. The result would be increased noise, noxious odors from outdoor cooking, barking dogs, and loud music. All this would result in a major disturbance of a quiet residential area. These proposed apartments would also result in prejudice to other properties in the vicinity. Statistics have proven that building an apartment in an established single-family neighborhood results in the reduction of value of the homes that are established. We, the homeowners, would suffer economic loss of our investments. It is ludicrous to state that a gas station or a convenience store could be built on the property because it is zoned commercial use. Neither one would conform to the neighborhood standards. In addition, Silver Sage is a side street. It is used almost exclusively by residents. A one-story office would definitely be consistent on this lot, and I would certainly approve of that. It is also a violation of Municipal Code 8.08, Section 20A. Fences, screens, walls, or retainers are used to provide privacy and security. The landlord is proposing to put in landscaping as a barrier. This is not consistent with the area and violates the code.
Ma'am,
I'm sorry?
you've exceeded your 3 minutes.
Oh, okay, I'll let somebody else finish. with
Okay,
me.
thank you. Sorry. Would someone else like to come up for public comment?
Hi, I'm Sandy Stephen, and I'm a resident and homeowner
Okay,
as
wait,
well on the
Sandy.
same street.
Sandy, I need you
And-
to sign in, and I need you to push the little green button.
I'm sorry, I haven't been able to hear a whole lot tonight. My ears are bad.
Okay. But we want to make sure we hear from you. So sign in.
Sorry. Anyway, I apologize. We have looked at this.
Can you pull the, yeah. Just put it closer to you.
There we've looked at this carefully, and we went through this a couple of years ago with the same problems, people wanting to change the SUP on it. And that's exactly what it amounts to. We're zoned, so to speak, for the residential. And right now, we're not residential, we're business. And they want to change us to that. In doing that, they will be able to put anything they want. And we're on a private street as it is, and that's not in the architecture, 2 stories on where we're located. first of all, it's gonna make a lot of people uneasy that they're not going to be able to see. It's gonna add quite a few cars, and the entrance and exit to it as well is poor. So, anyway, those were just my feelings on it, and we have a small petition that everybody in the neighborhood looked at and signed, and everybody's against it, whether that counts or not. But two-story, is way out. If somebody were to consider single-story, would certainly look at it and allow it to happen.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other further public comment?
Pardon me?
No, I'm just seeing if there's anyone else that would like
Oh, I
to
don't-
speak.
My name is Eugene Carhart, live at 3123 Eaton Way. I had 3 questions here, and after I read them, again, they sound a little offensive, and I do not mean to be offensive. But I'd like to ask 3 questions. And I don't ask you to answer them now, but I would like for you to ponder them when making a decision to approve or disapprove this permit. What right does the board have to approve a building that will lower the home values of the homes in close proximity of the apartments? What right does the board have to impose its will against the will of the people living in the neighborhood? And number 3, if this building is going to be built across the street from your home, as a board member, would you approve it? I would also like to take the task on this 2-story residence. All the 2-story residents in the neighborhood are single dwellings. What you're building and proposing to build is apartment buildings, and that does not qualify as a single dwelling. It's a monstrosity stuck right in the middle of a nice, quiet residential area. And I certainly hope you do not approve this project. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Hello. My name is Alex Echo, and I didn't come here planning to speak, but hearing what the other people are saying, I just want to say that I most heartily agree with what they're saying, and I have to thank them for bringing these topics up. And, some of the questions I had is, how could this proposal with so many code flagrant violations be approved when it'll be so detrimental to the area and things like that? And I just have to say, I totally agree with them, and that's about it. Any questions?
We can't answer questions.
Okay. That was an answer. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Hi. Okay, Don, I need you to hit it so it turns green. Perfect. Thank
Hello?
you.
Oh,
Got it.
there we go. Don't want to blow anybody away. I'm speaking for my wife that's behind me here. It's her condo. She bought it back in '94. I've been there since '98. And everything that Kitty, lady right here, we call her Kitty, anyhow, everything that she had brought up to you, ladies and gentlemen, behind that 100%. Obviously, as far as the view goes and all that, we know, I mean, you're not going to stop any of that kind of stuff. But the problem that it brings up is that we are, all of us around that whole area down there are on private streets. You know, and I've been up here 50 years around this time. I see what, happens, when you put that amount of people in a small area like, like that. And there'll be, and we have a lot of children and animals, et cetera, that are there. It's going to create a lot more traffic, whether they can say, well, no, we won't use your street, but yes, they will. It happens. It happens all across this nation, unfortunately. We're trying to obviously, bring all of this to your attention so that hopefully we can, get them to revise, this to what's existing. There are no apartments, around us. So what you see over there are condos, the 2 stories that are on Travis. Those are, at our last meeting when we went through this, one of the gentlemen on the board said that, well, you got apartments over there on Travis. Those are not. Those are 2-story condos. The ones that are on Chabasco, those are 2-story condos. No apartments around there. So, and unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people brought in, besides the people that are going to live there, they're obviously going to have friends that'll come over. Where are they all going to park? I mean, obviously they're going to park on wherever they can get a space to park. There won't be enough, there won't be enough room there for everybody, especially if you got, let's say you got 2 people, like my wife and I, we both have vehicles. Most of the people around over there have 2 vehicles. So how are we going to accommodate all of that with that small of a property? Looks like my time is up. So I'm not saying that the property should not be developed, but we want it at least to coincide with what all, what everything, everything that's there. This is really not appropriate for that area.
Okay, thank you.
Anyhow, God bless you all. God bless this country. Thanks for listening.
Any other further comment? Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Fran Hedman, Hedman, and I agree with my, okay. I agree with my fellow neighbors, and my property happens to butt up right to the, it's the unit right next to the parking lot. So I do have concerns about noise and increased traffic, because my bedroom does face Silver Sage, and at night, the traffic does slow down enough where I don't hear it as much and I can sleep through the night. But with this project, it might, not be good. And I would be concerned during construction, the time of construction and how it would affect my unit there. And that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, can we accept that? Todd? Can we accept a petition from the homeowners at this meeting?
Late material can be presented to the board. However, we need to have enough copies for both the board and to put at the back table at the for the public. So if you have enough copies, we can certainly it can be passed out as late material. If you don't have enough copies of it, then if you wanted to hand it to somebody, you can hand it to staff. But we can't have it as late material on the record.
Thank you. Okay, and bring it back to the board. Oh. All right, I'm sorry, bring it back to Heather, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. And I'll go ahead and file the list of signed names with the secretary for the record. So what I heard during public comment were concerns relating to height, parking, an apartment's use, access to the site, noise, and a question about construction hours. So I'll go ahead and note that in the neighborhood business zone, if a commercial use were being proposed at that site, it could be constructed at 26 feet without any review other than a building permit. It could go up tomorrow. The reason that this is before the Planning Commission this evening is because residential uses within a non-residential zone requires a special use permit. So that's why this project is before you this evening. In terms of parking, there is sufficient parking provided based on what our code requirements are, which would be 2 parking spaces per unit. So there's the garage spaces and then the open parking that's located on the southwest side of the property that would be considered sufficient parking for our code. As far as access goes, I discussed access on Stafford and Silver Sage. If the Planning Commission has additional questions on that, engineering can address those. With concerns related to noise and apartment uses where they're adjacent to or nearby single-family residences. Apartment uses are considered an acceptable and appropriate use within a neighborhood and are oftentimes located adjacent to single-family uses. So our code does not differentiate between multifamily and single-family uses. The only reason this special use permit is before you is because residential uses in the non-residential zone require the review. In terms of noise, if there is inappropriate noise at any site, we do have the ability for residents to call and file complaints with our code enforcement department. And if there's a code that is being violated, we do follow up with that. And then with regard to construction hours, I can defer to our planning manager, but I do not believe that we have construction hours limitations. Correct, we don't have construction hour limitations. So that's just not stated in code. So again, if the Planning Commission has any other questions on those items, then we can follow up with answers.
Thank you. Commissioners? Commissioner Crone?
Yeah, when this came before the Planning Commission the last time, I was not here. So I had the opportunity to drive through the neighborhood. And Heather, could you put up the elevations again of the buildings? One of the things that struck me about the elevations of these buildings is that I think whoever the designer was, I thought they did a pretty nice job, because you drove through the neighborhood and you started to see stone material used at the base of the buildings. You see stucco as a common use, a material throughout the neighborhood. You see position roof out there, very similar to a lot of the stuff you see in the neighborhood. So I thought it did a fairly nice job, or the designer did a fairly nice job of trying to visually blend the buildings into the neighborhood. I think they used a lot of the common construction materials that you would see throughout the neighborhood. So I was very impressed with the designer's sensitivity to that. I am concerned though, as I drove through the neighborhood, the landscaping in this neighborhood is very mature. So when you start looking at the landscaping plan that they've provided, again, it's, again, there's that condition in there that the landscaping plan has to come forward. But I'd like to talk to the applicant a little bit about the possibility of enhancing the landscaping even above the additional code requirements for that the city has. It's Division 3 of the code, and there's certain criteria that's required, but I'd like to see, especially along the south side of the property, the landscaping plan, again, in your packet. I realize that's not what probably will end up being a final document that goes into planning, but right now you only show a couple trees along the south property line. And so I'd like to see some extra trees along there, and just discuss the idea of just from a compatibility, visual compatibility with the neighborhood, that some of the landscaping that's proposed is going to blend in, as well as the architecture, I believe, is blending in. I would like to see the landscaping be done the same, and I think that may require going above and beyond the requirements within the code.
Yes, I agree with your concerns about the landscaping. The reason not as many trees on the frontage are shown is because there's so many utilities nearby. Carson City only allows, you have to be 10 foot on either side of a utility main. So we have sewer and water lines going through there. So we're actually extremely limited by the number of trees that we could put on the site. So I think it might be a reasonable condition to maybe require, 5 shrubs, additional shrubs, instead of 1 additional tree. Because it's basically the engineering code that won't allow us to put more trees on the site. And you have these very tight spaces. It's a pre-existing lot. So you have drainage areas, and if you put a tree in there, it's just gonna ruin the sidewalk or ruin. So I agree trying to make it look nicer, but I think we could pick, if we could pick shrubs or something that won't have damaging roots systems to destroy the utilities, even if it's more shrubs in lieu of trees, I think that would be acceptable.
Okay, I'm open to that. I understand your site constraints that way. I just think that so much effort and thought, in my opinion, has gone into the building architecture that I really would like to see some additional thought go into the landscaping. Realizing your site limitations, I get that. So I'm not sure how that could actually be put in a potential condition, but I understand your intent, and I appreciate that intent.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it's just, due to utility limitations, just in lieu of, if you said something in lieu of trees, a sufficient number of, whether it's 5 additional shrubs of, 5-gallon shrubs or something like that, instead of trees, I think that would work out.
Right, thank you.
Commissioner Borders?
Heather, do you?
Yeah, Chair Preston, if I may.
Yes.
I just wanted to reiterate what our code requires in terms of landscape area. So on street frontages, it actually requires a tree for every 30 lineal feet be placed on the frontages. So there's nothing in code that says that we can't work with an applicant on maybe concentrating those trees in different areas, but that is a requirement. So on the Stafford and Silver Sage Drive, that'll require 10 trees along the frontages. In addition to that, there are parking area trees that are required at 1 tree for every 10 parking spaces. So with this design, it's going to require 2 parking lot trees. So that's 12 trees that are required. And then I think getting to your point, Commissioner Cron, along the south side, there are additional trees that aren't part of the frontage trees and the parking lot area trees that are required at 1 tree for every 400 square feet. And I think what your goal is to concentrate the additional landscaped trees along the south side, if I heard you correctly.
Yes, that is correct. The neighbor, I think one of the neighbors I'm assuming she still was here, but she has the property just adjacent to the south of the property. And even though the buildings are believe 40 feet off the fence line, I believe I read. I still think that, some additional screening of the development from the neighborhood, specifically her property, I think would be a good neighborly thing to do.
So yes, if the commission desires that, we can modify or add a condition that concentrates the required trees along the southern portion of the property.
Commissioner Borders?
Heather, is it the hours of construction, is it appropriate to put hours of construction in this, or is that, I know in a lot of other projects, we have hours of construction.
Given that it's right within a predominantly very residential area, I think that this would be an appropriate time to add a condition of approval for construction hours, if that's what the planning commission
Okay.
desires.
And Commissioner DeChristopher?
Thank you. Yeah, I also walked the neighborhood, took some pictures, spent a lot of time looking at the plan. I understand and respect the comments that are made by the people that live in that neighborhood. I too have had several experiences of purchasing property that had vacant, undeveloped land, and it was an inherent risk of doing that. I knew that eventually something would be there. What I was happy in seeing with this one is I do think it is very complementary to the neighborhood. I think it fits in well. And when I look at the interior of that, I have to thank you. It's nice to have bedrooms that are bedrooms, not walk-in closets with the window. It has contemporary interior where there's family gathering. I think you're going to see this, especially with the one car right within that unit. It's going to attract people who are also complementary to the neighborhood. And I know things like hearing children, hearing dogs, that's a very subjective thing. Some like it, some don't, and unfortunately, we're not in a position to make a call on that. But with the conditions that we've discussed tonight, I think this is a good project to move forward with.
Commissioner Perry?
Thank you. First question is with regards to this piece of ground. Is this the last undeveloped piece of ground in the Stafford Greens PUD?
Yes, it appears to be the final one.
And this map with the colors on it that you show here, is that the outline of the PUD?
Whoops, sorry. I actually believe that it is. Yeah, I did click on a couple of the parcels that are zoned multifamily, and those are within the Stafford Greens PUD as well.
Okay.
Yes.
When did that date back to, just out of curiosity?
So I don't remember exactly when the PUD was adopted, but I do know that development of some of those homes, like on the east side of Chubasco, were developed in the late 80s. So I want to say it's been in place since then.
Okay. My second question is going to go to roads here. And there's Heather right there. So I'm curious, since there's a lot of discussion on roads right now, and we hear a lot about roads and our growth management plan that we approved, every year for the last few years says that we're at a deficit in road maintenance. So I want to understand and begin to do that at these meetings when we look at development with regards to where these roads around this exist in the scheme of funding, right? So I see 3 roads here. Silver Sage, which is a collector, right? Classified as a collector, or is it arterial, minor arterial?
I believe it is a collector.
Okay, and then let's go to Stafford Way. That's a local street, okay? And then the third here, which is Heaton Way.
It is a private street. I looked into the map and there is currently an access easement over the private street that is not restrictive.
So it is a private street. Does that mean that private street is maintained by the residents on either side of it?
Yes. Well, it's maintained within the HOA.
Within an HOA, okay. I know that's what a lot of our approved development the last few years has been. So now I better understand that. Now, with regards to some of the things that I read about funding and on the maintenance of roads, who maintains Sage and Stafford?
The city does.
The city, okay. And they're responsible for the maintenance of that. And do you know what the classification is based on the recent, not classification, but condition report
So
that the city engineer's office did?
So with that, the recent condition of Stafford Way is very poor, as you can see up above. While Silver Sage, portions of it range, it looks like along the frontage is poor. But to speak on that, partly with this, we always look at it as case by case basis. And with the street purpose, we do look at this pavement condition index, and also we do in-site inspections prior to any special use permit getting in front of you guys.
Okay, thanks. I'm so happy that you have that map. I only gave Heather a heads up today. And I wanted to share that with the rest of the commission, that I asked them to bring this, so going into the future, since we do have a maintenance or a deficit in maintenance and roads, that this could give us something when we're looking at development to kind of reference what is the condition of the roads. Because I know in some of these things we've done the last few years, some of the residents have said, wow, how can you approve that when the road is in such horrible shape? Thanks.
Heather gets kudos for that.
Any further questions? Comments? Board? Okay. I'm going to come back and, because I was part of the board that originally approved this. And one of the reasons that I approved this is because in prior years, when this was developed, they used to have the developer set aside a lot as a commercial when they had condominiums. And it's considered and we have several of them. You can actually see them on 5th Street. You can see them on, right on Roop in the property that was next to the post office, where land was set aside for a commercial use for this. And the same is where we ran into it with the PUD with Silver Oak. And at that time, when I first saw that, I thought that is absolutely nuts to put commercial right in the middle of a residential area. So my feeling on this when we approved it initially, and as we are looking at it now, is it's a great infill project. We talk a lot about housing. Right now, we have apartment complexes that are full, and they are getting full rents. And so this is definitely a need for this area. And this developer has gone ahead and put in some really nice things, and I know that we had quite a discussion in regards to right-hand turn lanes and left-hand turn lanes, and actually trying to figure out where to set the garbage cans. That was a big thing that we discussed. And my question is that we run into the same thing, is that several months ago, we have the site that is over off where Mills Landing is, and that was zoned commercial. And people thought that they would want to put condominiums in there, and in fact, we actually put in and approved the U-Haul new storage area that's going to shadow people, because they could actually go up to the 26 feet high. 40, God, yeah. Anyway, but so this is one of the things I'm looking at, is saying, I understand your concerns, but I also say that you could have a worse project. This is a good project. And so, I mean, that's my thought on it, and I don't know, what the other commissioners think. And I keep thinking that we had and I'd like to go back, because we originally had the 21 conditions of use or something like that. Didn't we, instead of putting trees, because I love trees just like everybody else, but I also pay water bills on commercial properties. and with special commercial irrigation, which is filled out at a higher rate than residential. It's very expensive. And my question is didn't we have a fence on that south side too? Yes, thank you.
There is a fence along the south side, a solid wood fence.
Okay, and it's a 6-foot fence, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay, so there is one already there. So, I mean, my idea of you bringing in a tree that, you know, is a 5-gallon tree is going to take a long time, even if they're all bunched up right there on that south side as a screen, you know.
Yes, no additional screening is technically needed with the solid fence because we're also putting up our own fence. So that way there's no issues of, you know, your plants or your residents damaging my fence. We want to put up our own fence next to it. So that way we don't have that issue. And that way we have our side of the fence and
Yeah, because, I mean, I just remember that was one of the conditions of use that we put back in when this was initially done. And unfortunately, I think one thing that's important here is that the permits did not get pulled, because otherwise this would have gone completely forward and we wouldn't even be here. So, I don't know. Any other thoughts on that one? Okay, go for it.
I think
Put your,
maybe I just turned myself off. I think we need a 6-foot fence on the property line next to Heaton.
okay.
And I also think we need hours of construction. And I don't know if 7 to 7 is right or what the number is, but I think we need, this is a residential area. And I know construction people like to start when the sun comes up and quit when it goes down, but you know, there's something to be said for the neighborhood. And I'm not sure what the number is yet, but I would like to see those two conditions as added to that. I think the property, like our chairman just said, you know, if you'd pulled the permits and started, we wouldn't even have been here. So unfortunately, you gave us another chance to redo it. And so I think if we can make those changes, I think it is a good infill project. And I think with the demographics that we're seeing, I think you're going to see residents that are going to look a lot like the residents that are there.
Mhm.
And so.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Okay.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Okay. I just wanted to just verify that we're here for the use and not the building height. And then I think the staff report did a really good job of explaining everything. And like I said, this is the last infill project for quite a ways, like half a mile, maybe even a mile, except for I think in the off Carson Street. There was a little confusion. There's no access proposed off Heaton, pedestrian or vehicular at all. And then there have been many concerns about parking, traffic, noise, odors, disturbance, that sort of stuff. Currently, under the current zoning, there's many uses that would generate substantially more to all those factors. Convenience store, limited gaming, laundrette or laundromat, retail liquor and alcohol beverages, tobacco shop, all those could be built. We could build it 26 feet high tomorrow, and it would require no review. So I think the peak hour trips from this is like 8 vehicles. So compared to an actual commercial use, you're gonna see substantially more trips, probably 40 to 80 peak hour trips. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Okay, does somebody want to go ahead and make a stab at this and add it with the fence and the hours? Okay.
Let me see if I can find my paper.
Commissioner Borders,
Yes,
I have an easy button for you on the hours if you'd like.
please.
So the tentative map conditions have hours of construction for subdivisions, so we could kind of mirror that, which says hours of construction will be limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. If the hours of construction are not adhered to, the Carson City Building Department will issue a warning for the first violation, and upon a second violation, will have the ability to cause the work at the site to cease immediately.
Okay. So could we just say that the hours of operation will be consistent with the subdivision ordinance?
Yes, staff can incorporate that.
Okay. All right, then my motion says I move to approve the special use permit LU 2023-0016 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report, with the addition of item number 10, which is a 6-foot fence will be constructed along the property line adjacent to Heaton Way, and number 11, that the construction hours will be consistent with the subdivision ordinance.
All in favor?
You want to ask him if those are?
Oh, yes, do you agree?
Yes, we agree.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed. Under the same, if it doesn't work for the surrounding community, it doesn't work for me. I can't approve a project based against the will of the surrounding residents. So that's my stance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. And I'm going to ask that we still have a meeting going on. So if you'd like to speak, please go on outside. All right, no problem. And then the next question I have, is there any other further public comment on anything other than what's been put in front of this board? Then we have a comment too? Well, I don't see Denny here and I'm just lost. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, now ready for a staff report, please?
Heather Ferris again for the record. So the board's retreat is coming up on March 3rd. As you guys know, it will be a joint meeting, at least in the morning, between the board and the planning commission to discuss Title 18. And it turns out that they actually did combine Title 17 into that joint meeting as well. So contrary to what we were told previously, you'll be talking about both of them with the board. It is at I'll send you guys the invite, but it is at the college, I think in the Nugget Room. And my calendar says it starts at 8. I don't know what the agenda says. Okay, so the agenda shows 8:15. There will be lunch, so you guys should have received an email from the city manager's office, so be sure to get your orders for lunch in to them by the 27th.
I'm going to ask for some clarification on that because I started reading the menu and it looks like it says boxed lunches, but then it goes and gives us the entire menu. It's it's kind of confusing.
Okay.
I don't like so many choices.
You can reach out to Rachel.
Okay,
I'm not
you.
involved in it at all.
Did they?
Yeah, I think so.
Did they
Yeah, we
send
should have
that to
a
our
smorgasbord.
city email address or our personal?
I do not know.
Did it? Okay.
Okay.
Because I haven't seen my city email address since,
Since you got it?
yeah.
So there's also going to be the topic of transient and non-transient use of the hotels and motels in town. If you're interested in that, that supplemental material will be posted on the website as late material. You can stick around. It won't be part of the joint meeting, but you can stick around and listen to that if you're interested. For the March 29th Planning Commission meeting, we have quite a few items. We've got 7 requests for the 5-year review of billboards. Generally, they're along Carson Street and Highway 50. The school district has 2 different applications. One's for a special use permit for a new sign at one of the elementary schools. And then another is for installation of charging stations for electric buses at the high school.
Why does that need a special use permit?
Because of the zoning, everything in the P zonings require a special use permit.
Okay.
We have an SUP for in-home daycare for up to 12 kids off of Florentine Drive, which is just north of Budeye and east of 580. We have an amendment to an SUP to allow for an additional unit in an existing apartment complex on North Lampa Lane. And then we have 2 tentative subdivision maps. We've got Anderson Ranch West coming back and Blackstone Ranch Phase 2. That's everything for next month.
So when do we plan on starting this meeting?
We haven't gotten there yet, but I will reach out. We might have some things fall off.
I think that all of us are aware now that a lot of times these billboards, especially along Highway 50, are becoming a little bit more, we end up with more public comment, also with the tentative subdivision maps.
Yes. And that's all I have.
Can we do the maps earlier in the agenda? Because if we have a whole house full of people here and we make them sit here for 3 hours, then they get surly. I'd just soon get it over with if that makes sense.
So we could consider a couple different things. If we do start early, we could maybe get everything else out of the way before 5 and then start at 5 or 5:30 with everything that we didn't get done before that.
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah. So I don't think that'll
A
fly.
consent agenda on billboards?
I don't think that'll fly with the DA's office. I think because of the ownership, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Todd about this, but we'll take a look at how we can maybe streamline the agenda a bit, because there's some ownership where we can maybe talk about all of the billboards that are owned by one common owner.
Is the
Under
change
one
in
item.
billboard approval in the draft of the new title?
I didn't
Because it
get-
was in there when we started.
I didn't get that far in my review.
I got my book, but I haven't read it yet.
And I do just have, I have one request, Heather. If we're starting before 4 o'clock, the sooner the better,
Yes,
as I have to take time off work to do that.
understood. That's it for me.